Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving into an absolutely fascinating, deeply reflective piece of philosophical sci-fi and future memoir. It's titled 2085, Consciousness, the Universe, and God. And it's a story set in a near future where humanity has, well, seemingly conquered death. But as we're going to see, these massive technological breakthroughs really only serve to sharpen the oldest, most profound questions of our existence. What does it actually mean to be me? What is personal identity? And ultimately, what gives meaning to a finite life?
Okay, so let's set the scene. Picture this. Our narrator is an 83-year-old man sitting all alone in a quiet room while a heavy rainstorm washes over the city outside. And he notes something really poetic right off the bat. He says that at 83, rain sounds entirely different than it did when he was young. Back then, the sound of rain felt like the beginning of something. But now, just watching it from behind the glass, it sounds like a quiet ending. It's this beautifully cinematic opening that immediately anchors us in a really profound sense of nostalgia.
And he reflects on this specific age, 83, because life looks drastically different from this vantage point. He makes this observation that his changing perspective on the rain might actually be because his generation spent the vast majority of its life trying to escape endings entirely. When he was young, they truly believed they might conquer death. They spent all their energy just looking forward, never really stopping to embrace the finality of things. Which brings us to Section 1, the dream of immortality and escaping endings.
Let's look at how this builds over a lifetime. When our narrator was in his youth, eternal life was humanity's oldest, most fervent dream, but it was just that, a dream. By the time he hit his 40s, though, that dream actually materialized. This monumental technological breakthrough happened. And now, at age 83, he's living with the philosophical aftermath. He's realizing that while technology totally changed the world, it left the most fundamental human questions completely untouched.
So what exactly happened when he was in his 40s? Let's jump into Section 2, the breakthrough and conquering death. Basically, quantum computing had matured. Advances in neuroscience reached this incredible pinnacle. And then came the historic broadcast that quite literally changed civilization. They announced, "We have successfully preserved human consciousness." Our narrator vividly remembers the global euphoria. You had scientists in white coats applauding, news anchors just struggling to contain their excitement as they declared that humanity had finally transcended biological death. Financial markets soared immediately. Religious leaders were debating, some calling it total hubris, others claiming it proved the soul was real. It was just this moment of unparalleled global hope. And you have to understand, neural recording wasn't just some basic computer backup. It was the complete preservation and digital reconstruction of a human brain's state with astonishing precision. We're talking about the sheer power to flawlessly store everything that makes up a human life. The exact memory of a childhood pet, the feeling of a first love, the very last conversation you had with a spouse. It was a perfect digital mirror of a human mind. But as the narrator tells us, this global excitement soon hit a very chilling turning point. This is Section 3, I Am Not Him. The chilling truth. Up until now, death had felt pretty distant to our narrator. But then this one specific, deeply personal event occurred. The public was introduced to a preserved university professor. Now, this man had completed a full neural recording just days before he was unfortunately involved in a fatal accident. Researchers were absolutely thrilled because they had a perfect reconstruction. His family recognized him, his personality was identical, his memories were totally flawless. So they hold this press conference, and the room is filled with this quiet, eager anticipation to hear from a man who had effectively returned from the grave. But when the professor spoke, he silenced the entire room. He looked at the reporters and scientists and just said, "I am not him." I mean, try to imagine the absolute disbelief in that room. The reporters froze, the scientists are exchanging these uneasy glances, frantically pointing out that he had all the original man's memories and matching personality traits. They're asking him what exactly could possibly be different. The professor sat in silence for a long moment. And then he delivered a line that our narrator never, ever forgot. He said, "Because I know he died." Just let the gravity of that settle for a second. It is an absolute philosophical shockwave. Right, so this just sparked a massive internal crisis for our narrator, and it only grew larger over the decades. What exactly had humanity preserved? Like, if a perfect copy of his memories could be created, would that copy actually be him? Sure, it would know his childhood, his fears, his regrets. It might even genuinely believe it was him. But would his own biological awareness actually continue within it? Or would it just be a highly complex package of information? Someone else entirely, merely carrying his story forward? Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, the unsigned contract and a very personal dilemma. Fast forward to the narrator's older years. By this point, consciousness preservation is no longer a miracle, it's just a routine commodity. You have former politicians giving interviews long after their biological deaths, artists releasing new works, dead business founders attending board meetings. And one rainy evening, a young researcher offers the narrator a complimentary preservation contract. He takes it home, places it on his desk, and just stares at it while the rain falls outside. So he's sitting there forced to literally weigh his original self against this preserved mind. On one hand, there is something incredibly comforting about his thoughts surviving, right? Future generations being able to speak with him, his experiences remaining accessible. But on the other hand, the finality of biological death is looming, and he just cannot escape the memory of that professor saying, "Because I know he died." He's wrestling with this ultimate core question. If consciousness can be copied, does the self actually survive? The narrator admits he spent his whole lifetime studying religion, the Bible, Buddhist texts, philosophy. He listened to scientists and dreamers. He thought he was searching for God, but really, he was searching for what it means to be human. And despite all that lifelong learning, he could not find a definitive answer to this technological paradox. He gets brutally honest here about the mystery. He wonders if consciousness is just woven into quantum processes. Like, is the soul just a pattern that briefly emerges from the universe before dissolving right back into it? Is God the underlying order from which everything arises? He admits, comfortably actually, that at 83, he simply does not know whether consciousness is more than just information. And that realization brings us to the emotional climax of our explainer, Section 5, the real mystery of living before death. Our narrator actually ends up folding the contract right back up, sliding it into the envelope, and leaving it unsigned. And it's not because he somehow solved the mystery of life after death, but because he reached a much more profound realization. He says, "The question that haunted me throughout my life was never what happens after death." He realizes that spending a lifetime preparing for tomorrow, for retirement, for heaven, for immortality, for a time when everything will finally make sense, that completely misses the point of existence. Because the real crucial realization is simply this: it was how to live before it. He realizes that the true, most difficult challenge of humanity isn't conquering death at all. It's simply being present. It is the incredibly hard work of fully inhabiting a single day, to be grateful, to be honest, to love the people around us while we still actually can. As he makes this decision, the rain outside his window finally stops. Beyond the clouds, the evening sun breaks through, and its light just fills the room. He notes that, strangely enough, it looks exactly like the timeless sunsets he remembers from his childhood. It's this beautiful, quiet moment that evokes a deep sense of peace. He accepts that if consciousness is just quantum information that returns to the universe, then so be it. He no longer feels compelled to know the answer. The ordinary sunset is entirely sufficient. Which leaves him, and honestly all of us, with one final, incredibly provocative thought. As he sits there in the sunset, he realizes the greater challenge is much simpler than eternal life. The only question that truly matters is, how shall I live this day? For now, that is enough. And perhaps it always was. Take a moment to ask yourself that very question today.